Hey guys, what's good? It's the Tominator. So, in the midst of this messy, drawn-out show of an election going on in America, across the pond we had yet another bodybuilding show taking place, the 2020 British Grand Prix. It was a somewhat shallow lineup, true, but still there were a couple big names, namely James Hollingshead and Regan Grimes, who went 1 and 2 respectively. So Hollingshead collected another victory, punching himself a ticket to the 2021 Mr. Olympia, which is a bit odd considering the 2020 Olympia hasn't even happened yet, but I guess they wanted to keep on schedule for next year. Plus, I believe the 2019 British Grand Prix already qualified someone for this year's Olympia. I want to say it was Nathan DeAsha, but don't quote me on that. Anyway, despite this year being a total dud, I think we can all agree, an unmitigated disaster in many ways, it must have been a bright spot in the life of James Hollingshead at least, who has now secured his spot at the next 2 Olympia contests. I mean, let's give the man credit, he's gotta be the most improved pro bodybuilder of the year. I'd barely even heard of the guy before, and suddenly he's winning back-to-back shows and beating several other big names in the process. Gotta say I'm pretty impressed. And he definitely deserved his victory here. He was simply the most muscular, most conditioned bodybuilder on stage, and won the majority of poses. It doesn't get much more clear-cut than that. But let's go through it regardless and call each of the 8 mandatories, because, hey, that's what we do here on this channel. So, right off the bat, in this front relaxed, Marc Hector really stands out to me. That's the guy in the pink trunks with the tiny waist. That V-taper is just ridiculous. I'm seeing shades of Brian Buchanan. So, he came in 3rd place, and I think that was correct. What I see in him is like another Patrick Moore type, a highly aesthetic physique with long arms and great lines, but in major need of some extra mass and thickness, especially through the lower body. Some people are arguing that he should have beat Regan Grimes, but I don't see it. Regan is more complete and just better from the back, so he deserved that runner-up. But I tell you what, in this front double bi, there is a case to be made for Hector here. He's got the biggest guns, and those proportions are pretty nutty. Again, I'm reminded of guys like Buchanan and Sergio Oliva Sr., with the arms seemingly almost the same size as the waist. Very commendable. But I'm not so sure this would hold up with better video quality. I suspect the extra muscularity and muscle maturity of someone like Hollingshead would put him over the top, even though his proportions and outline don't look as impressive. His legs are definitely the best in the lineup, though. Regan looks solid here, but not spectacular. The arms kind of let him down, especially the biceps. They don't have enough size and roundness. You give him Marc Hector's biceps and he probably wins this shot. But as it is, based on this look, I'm gonna go ahead and tentatively give it to Hector, because even though he's the smallest and almost looks like classic physique in an open lineup, that upper body outline is just incredible, and I think deserves to be rewarded. Now, it's a toss-up between Grimes and Hollingshead in 2nd, and the tall guy, Jamie Christian something or other, I forget his last name, but it was something hyphenated. I would put him last, because despite towering over the competition, he looks too lean for that massive tall frame. The lat spread, though, is a strong pose for Jamie, the giant on the left. It's too bad the angle is so off for him here. I can't really judge this one, but he looks huge and extremely broad through the chest and shoulders. I like it a lot. He may even win this pose, and you know what? Alright, let's just give it to him, but with a big asterisk, because like I said, you can't really judge it accurately when he's not facing head on. Regan and James are neck and neck again. Regan's better structurally, and in terms of the lats, I'd give him a slight edge, but Hollingshead has the edge in thickness and the lower body. I think in real life, James would probably prevail due to greater density and better conditioning, but here that's not so apparent. Marc Hector, again, that's the guy on the right, is kind of disappointing. After displaying such an epic taper in the front relaxed, he doesn't really seem to capitalize on his potential here. To be fair, he's got the crappiest angle of the 4 men, and his outline is being compromised by the other bodybuilders standing behind him in the background, but still, I guess I expected more from him in this one. The side chest goes to Hollingshead, hands down. He's the hardest, packs the most thickness, and has the best lower body by far. Everybody else needs to bring up their hamstrings, especially the 2 guys on the outside, who look way too thin through the legs. I mean, the giant Jamie's legs might technically be the biggest if you were to measure them all, but that's only because he's got like 5 or 6 inches on everybody else. His legs still look too lean for his size and don't show enough sweep. The angle is again way off for him, so I can't really tell where he fits in, whether he's 3rd or 4th, but as it is, I'd have Regan firmly in 2nd. He's showing a lot of quality detail, but I don't know, did he come in maybe a little flat at this show? He still looks really good, but not good enough to topple Hollingshead. Okay, and into the side triceps, I guess? That's a little different. They usually do this one after the back poses, but okay. And I give Hollingshead the win here too. Big, beefy triceps, tight defined midsection, huge shoulder and pecs, and of course he's winning downstairs, so pretty easy decision in my opinion. Regan looks surprisingly small through the arms. I know I already criticized him in the front double for that, but that was mainly in regards to the biceps. I've always thought his triceps were quite strong, but not so much here. He's also forgetting to lock in the hamstrings, and they seem to shrink before our very eyes. The midsection and torso look nice, so I might still give him the nod over Hector, who isn't showing as many sharp cuts. Who knows though, with better footage or different lighting, maybe Hector beats him, but right now he looks sort of washed out. The big man Jamie likewise isn't displaying enough separation, no horseshoe in the lateral head, smooth lower body, so I gotta put him last here. Turning to the rear, Jamie looks harder now. He looks very dry and tight with some decent upper back development, but will that translate into the back double? Let's see. Not really. He looks way too lean for his size still. And this is why bodybuilding is a short man's game. You get much over 6 feet, and it becomes very difficult to fill out your frame. Tall guys tend to look lanky even when they're 300 pounds. There's been exceptions, of course, like Paul Dillette or Cedric McMillan, but these are the exceptions, not the rule. Grimes looks great. Best back in the lineup, genetically speaking. He's wider than Hollingshead with lower lat insertions. But Hollingshead is simply on another level conditioning-wise. He's absolutely dry as a bone. You can see feathers in his traps and veins in his lumbar back, for Christ's sake. And the glutes are so desiccated, they're practically withering away. Yet he still retains a round and full look through the shoulders and also through the arms compared to Regan, so I give James the W once again. Regan is close, but no cigar. Marc Hector's getting badly out-angled. You can see that they're all cheating the line except for him. And while he's got good shape and detail, he's lacking in thickness and polish. Maybe he needed some more posing oil, because nothing is really popping on his physique right now, and he looks flat here despite his genetic round muscle bellies. I'd still have him in third, however. The rear lat spread is another one that Regan should win on paper, and there's a strong argument that he does. But I'm personally leaning towards Hollingshead, if only by a hair. He just looks a little crisper through the traps, lower back, and lower body. Regan may be a tad wider though, so it is extremely close. I like Jamie here too. Just like the front lat spread, he appears super wide, but it looks a little funny how his shoulders seem to dominate the shot. I think despite that crazy width, he still needs to bring up his back to be properly proportionate in this one. I would have him beating Hector this time though, because Marc suffers from a similar problem, but is basically a smaller version. Next up, we've got the ab and thigh. And this one's a toss-up depending on whether you favor abs or quads. And I think the judges generally place more emphasis on the quads, so as long as your midsection is reasonably defined and not bloated, the man with the better legs usually wins. In which case, this goes to Hollingshead. Regan's abs are better. I think that they're a little more nicely shaped, better formed. And his quads are also quite good, not a weak point by any means. But Hollingshead is just packing so much beef through the thighs, it's hard to beat that when he's on. And his midsection is also quite strong in its own right. After that, I'd have Jamie in third, then Hector in fourth, because Hector's the smallest and the least sharp of the bunch. Okay, most muscular time. This is a good ending for the entire group. All of them look solid here. The hands-on hip showdown in the middle is sort of like a repeat of the front lat spread in a sense, with Regan being better structurally, but Hollingshead packing more thick, dense muscle, especially through the chest and quads. Overall, I like Regan more, but I think when we're judging a pro show, with the way that they tend to focus on mass and conditioning above all else, you gotta lean slightly in favor of James. Giant Jamie's crab over there is pretty insane. It's a little different how he stands so upright, but I like it. Really highlights his mass through the delts, pecs, and traps. Marc Hector looks awesome through the upper body, but those wheels need work, big time. That's his biggest weakness for sure. The upright crab for Regan is also money. I like this more than James's hands clasped, because Hollingshead looks narrow here, and the arms, while solid, aren't good enough to make up for that. This hands-on hip for the giant is wicked, but in my opinion, that dainty stance kind of ruins it. It's like menacing upstairs, but ballerina downstairs. Like, what are you going for here, dude? Regan's leaning hand-on hip is superb, bringing out all the feathering in the quadriceps. Where was this earlier? Did he show this kind of detail in the ab and thigh? Maybe I missed it, but that could have really helped him there and put him over the top in that one. Marc Hector in the crab reminds me of a young Ronnie Coleman, like a 92 to 94 Ronnie when he was still quote-unquote natural. Those biceps are absolutely outstanding, and depending on this guy's age, I don't know how young he is, but he could have a very bright future ahead of him. And Hollingshead here with the single hand on hip is highly reminiscent of a prime Branch Warren. Not the biggest guy, certainly not the best on a structural level, but boy oh boy does he pack a lot of quality beef onto his frame. And in fact, I believe Branch is actually one of James's biggest idols too. I've seen him shout him out a couple times on social media, and I can definitely see a similarity there in terms of their physiques, with the massive legs and the grainy conditioning and whatnot. So yeah guys, when it's all said and done, I had Hollingshead winning at least 4 or 5 of the compulsories, and he was right there in the running for all the others, so this was a decisive win. I also agree with the rest of the top 4 placings for that matter. I think the judges got it spot on. But how do you guys feel about this one? Do you agree with the results? And how do you figure James Hollingshead is going to fare at the Olympia this year? I'm thinking top 10 is totally achievable for him, maybe even top 8, especially if he keeps nailing his conditioning like this. I'll be honest, I didn't have high expectations for him before. In fact, he was barely on my radar until very recently. But after watching these convincing performances in the past month or two, I'm rooting for the guy and hope he continues to do well. And based on a couple clips where I've seen him speaking, he seems like a smart, cerebral type of bodybuilder, which I can definitely appreciate. That's all too rare these days. Okay, but that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and please drop a like and subscribe for more if you haven't already. Until next time, it's the Tominator signing off, and I'll be back.